Alright, these are the things that I got. We got this gasket kit. We got 2 knock sensors. And we got the cable. Hopefully this goes okay. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, so I guess we'll find out. So before this gets underway, I just wanted to show the code that my car was throwing. It's a P0330 code. And now we're just going to start by taking off the engine cover with an Allen key. Next, we're going to disconnect the positive battery terminal. Next, we're going to disconnect the 10mm bolts from the airbox and disconnect the mass airflow sensor. And we're going to wiggle off the hose at the back of one of the valves and then remove the airbox. You can also loosen up one of the bolts over there near the airbox intake. Take out the filter and remove this hose. Get it out of the way. And then on this rail, which has a bunch of hoses and valves, we are going to be removing some bolts to basically unsecure it. Here's a close-up, and we're moving some more hoses. I had that red marker there and I numbered all of the hoses as well as the spot that they go on, so I know how to put them back when I'm done. Move the rail out of the way, and now I'm breaking some of the bolts to remove that big plume, the big aluminum air intake into the engine. And just to make it a bit easier on myself, I decided to take off the bolts. Well, you have to take off the bolts on, I think that's the throttle body. Those guys were 10mm, by the way. Okay, great news from the void. So after spending like 2 hours of my life, I got this bolt, which is sitting right underneath the wiper here. This thing with the washer, this bolt and washer, sitting right under there. I got it out from here because I bought this angled wrench, and that was literally the only way, and I had to move this hose out of the way too. So 1 bolt down, 2 more left. There was that one over there, but now that I have this thing, I feel like it should be easier. So this big bolt, I think, is the biggest one. That was 9/16. There. Can you see that? Stripped as hell. Alright, day 2 of doing something the mechanic should have done. I got this thing, a 1/4 inch drive. So after much struggling, I was finally able to get those 3 bolts at the back off. When I went to reassemble it, it was terribly hard to put them back on as well. Here you really had to like force this thing out of the way. It honestly might have been easier to completely remove that little red piece. But it is what it is. And there's a couple more hoses here that I had to remove. And once those are off, you can sort of wiggle this out of the way. Like I said, next time I would probably take the red thing off because it was really difficult to get out. And now I'm plugging all of the holes and removing the gasket. Don't want to get any dirt into the engine. Now I'm unplugging the fuel injectors and undoing the fuel rail lines with, I think they're 10 millimeters. And you lift it, and once you undo this last bolt here, which is keeping it secured, you lift it and move it out of the way. I took out the top thing, and it turns out that this hose I was fiddling with, which you actually can't see, that one there, right there, I don't actually need to take that off, which is a win. But now I'm gonna put stuff in all these holes and take off the gaskets. So I ended up needing to loosen the part at the far side over there and loosen one of the hoses there too, which leaked a bunch of coolant. And then kind of turn it out of the way to get access to the knock sensors, which are underneath that really thick coolant line. Yes. And we disconnected the knock sensor over there. And this is me removing the knock sensor. I forget the size, but it was a pretty large wrench that you need to get on the knock sensor. 24, maybe 26 millimeters. And then screwing the new ones in. Screwing another new one in. It's really kind of hard to access back there. And here's the new connector harness. So once I got it in place, I just had to reconnect it to the new knock sensors. I also want to note that I did something that probably wasn't too smart, which is that I did not torque the knock sensors to the appropriate torque because all I had was that really big wrench. So if you're doing this, I would recommend getting a torque wrench and doing it properly. You'll see why soon. And then now we're just back to reassembly. So basically put everything back the way it was. I tried to keep the bolts in the general vicinity of where they needed to go. And you just start fastening it up. And you're supposed to do this in a bit of star formation. I just fastened them loosely, and then I torqued them down as best as I could. Did not have a torque wrench at the time, so I probably over tightened them, which I think is better. You want to tighten them, but not to the point where they strip. Fuel rail is going back on. Securing the fuel line. So after I reassembled everything, oh yeah, I did change all the spark plugs and ignition coils as well, but once everything was reassembled, I started the car and I was actually getting both knock sensor codes. I did what I should have done originally, which is diagnose it electronically. Alright, so I went out to the store, got these alligator clips and soldered it on. So I have in number 1, this wired all the way to this multimeter. And then down here I have the other side, so this is just electrical tape together because I don't have a clip for the other end, but you could just do 2 clips. And then you grab this guy, and so I was in pin 1, so I have a little resistor tail here, and if I just plug it in, you can hear the beeping. So I have continuity, so that's good. Now I'm gonna do the other side. Alright, part 2. Fuck, why is there continuity? What does that mean? Alright, after further testing, the results are inconclusive. So after I failed to diagnose it electronically, I just decided to splice together the 2 knock sensors and make one good knock sensor, and then trick the computer, the ECU, into thinking that the one sensor was giving both signals by basically jumping it at the ECU. Alright, so I found the wiring diagram online, and it's this black and gray wire. So what I'm gonna have to do is splice. So in order to do this, I needed to find a new location for the knock sensor, and I just drilled a hole in this bit of metal frame here that's sort of next to the coolant, and then I tapped the hole and put the old new sensor in there. Alright, here's the solution. I literally made a hole and tapped it and put the sensor in there, and I'm feeding it under here, through here, and this black wire is the thing that's getting the signal, and it's going down there. Fuck me. Alright, the new wire has been protected, and I've looped it around that thing, and it's hanging out down there. There's a bit of slack. That's in case it fucking breaks on me. So I can fix it later. And that's the old sensor, which is going underneath the engine block. And I don't need it anymore, because I have a better one. So the video didn't give the clearest explanation, but what actually happened is I basically just took a wire from the knock sensor and I spliced into it, and then I spliced into the harness that went directly to the ECU, because I think what happened was while I was fixing it, I broke the little plastic bit that connects the ECU wiring harness to the knock sensor wiring harness, so there wasn't good contact between the pins and the knock sensors through that harness. So I basically just had to get creative and find a way to jump that, but I went past the pins on the harness and I just spliced in the wire, and then at the ECU I used a resistor leg to shove it in between the 2 pins basically and jump the signals to trick the ECU into thinking that it was getting a good signal, and I haven't had a problem in about a year, so it's working. If I had known how many days it was going to take me to get access to the knock sensors and replace the new ones, I probably would not have done it, and I would have just gone with the drill a hole in the frame right out of the gate. Hopefully this helps someone who runs into the same problems that I ran into after they go through this whole replacement job, and they can kind of work their way through a solution like I did to keep their car running. Also, for a while after this, my car was burning a decent amount of oil, so make sure that you're double checking everything and you're checking your oil pretty frequently. It's been about a year now, and actually it seems to be burning much less oil after about 4 or 5 oil changes, so it's doing pretty solid.